Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Kara's Cure show and podcast, where we explore the cutting edge of wellness. I'm Kara Sundlin. Have you been suffering from fatigue, insomnia, mood swings, pains, or other symptoms like that after having COVID? It actually could be long COVID. And Dr. Artemis Morris is a naturopathic doctor and founder of the Artemis Wellness Center. She's joining us now with how we can get our good health back. Welcome, doctor.
Thank you, Kara. Thanks for having me.
I get emails all the time as hosting a show like this. What do I do? What do I do? Or, could this be related to COVID? You're saying, let's just start with the statistics. About 1 in 5 people will experience long COVID.
Yes, those are the recent stats in the United States, and about 45% of people worldwide will experience long COVID. And what it is really is whenever you're exposed to a virus, in this case, the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and your system mounts an immune response. So that could be, even according to some studies, an immune response to a vaccine or actually getting COVID. Either of those can have the same effect on your immune system, whereby your immune system ramps up to fight the infection. For some people, like 1 in 5, what happens is it gets ramped up and it keeps ramped up. So this is the long COVID. It's a systemic inflammation. And we have more information on it in terms of mechanism. Dr. Leo Galland, many research papers coming out are finding that it could be related to an enzyme called angiotensin converting enzyme, which is the place where the COVID virus binds as well on the cell. So we have some really interesting information that's coming out.
Let's talk about some of the symptoms. I referred someone to you recently because she was really struggling with insomnia, and then, of course, went to Dr. Google and found out that insomnia actually could be a really common symptom after having COVID.
Yes, any type of symptom that is an inflammatory symptom. So what the literature is showing is that it's a multifactorial syndrome, and it's similar to chronic fatigue. A lot of the research on it was looking at that. So fatigue is the biggest symptom, just not having the energy. You could have headaches, you could have sleep problems, you can continue a loss of smell or taste. You can have breathing difficulties. These are some of the symptoms. There's also signs like pulmonary function tests could be compromised. You can have increase in blood sugar. You can have blood pressure issues. You can have aches and pains. There are increased risk for diabetes. There's increased risk of heart disease, of blood clots. There's also increased risk of cognitive issues, cognitive decline. And many of these symptoms and signs are due to what is happening internally, like that ACE2 enzyme, what its role is in terms of how the immune system's responding. And then we have also something called mitochondria. We have the gut as well. So there was a study that found that when people were hospitalized with COVID, they had increased risk of something called gut dysbiosis. So there are many different mechanisms by which this is happening. And so you can have virtually any symptom under the sun, but all of them are inflammatory symptoms.
Okay, so that's the root. And I know as a naturopathic doctor, that's sort of where you want to focus. Like, where's the root? How do we not just trim this weed? How do we get the root? The good news is a lot of people do recover completely, but there are some things that we can do that will really help us. So you don't just have to wait it out or wonder, am I going to feel normal again, right?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up, because what I'm seeing in my patient population and what a lot of naturopathic integrative functional medicine practitioners are seeing and reporting is that the patients, like my patients, very few of them have long COVID. And a lot of other integrative physicians are seeing the same thing, because our patients are put on a good quality multivitamin. They're put on what I call the foundational 4. They're put on vitamin D, because vitamin D deficiency increases your risk of having long COVID and complications due to COVID. So they're on foundational nutrients like high quality multivitamin without iron, vitamin D, omega-3 fatty acids, and probiotics. And then there's other nutrients that we might put our patients on as well that are for long COVID.
We've got
And
some of
these,
those if you're watching right now. There's some of them I want to draw your attention to the screen, but maybe we could just go through them. Vitamin D, I know that's one of the foundational fours, but you also say if you haven't been taking it and you've gotten COVID, we really should be supplementing with vitamin D.
yes, vitamin D, it's a fat soluble vitamin and it works like a natural immune booster. And deficiency of vitamin D is associated with worse symptoms, worse pathology. So you're going to have a worse outcome if you're vitamin D deficient. And even taking it, there's studies like that have been done in hospital settings and in continuing care settings for older adults that have shown that a nice boost of vitamin D when you get sick can also help with recovery. So at least 2,000 IUs a day, which is about 50 mcgs. You might need to go higher. My immune boost packs have 5,000 in it with K. So I like to be conservative, starting at least 2,000, but 5,000 might be better. And you really want to get an individualized dose from your naturopath or integrative physician, but at least 2,000 IUs of vitamin D.
Yep. And you
And
know,
then
a lot of people haven't gotten their vitamin D tested, or it might be more common for your regular doc to test it. But if not, you can ask for it. So if you want to get a level, what's an ideal level?
that's a great question. And we're really trying to understand that as well. But basically, the test, it's a blood test, simple blood test called 25 hydroxy vitamin D. You can request that from your physician. It may or may not be covered by insurance at some points, but it's a really important test to see what your levels are because your vitamin D status will affect your risk of getting long COVID, your risk of severity of infection, and even your risk of respiratory infection. So you want to have a level when you look at it as a blood level. I don't like to usually rest my hat on numbers, but anywhere between 30 to 50 nanograms per milliliter is a good dose,
Okay.
is a good number.
A good
And
number.
everyone varies, you know, based on pigment in your skin. It's based on many different on your fat cells, but at least 2,000 IUs at 50 mcg is going to be a safe dose for most everyone.
Okay. Let's, if we can, it would be great to put that graphic back up. But some of the other, I think most people know what vitamin D is, omega-3 fatty acids, or otherwise known as fish oil. That's also something you would prefer we take all the time. We don't generally get enough of it, but certainly it brings down inflammation if you're having some COVID issues.
Absolutely. And then going back to vitamin D, I'm hoping pretty soon, it sounds like from the weather forecast, we might get some sunshine, which is actually the best way to get vitamin D. So if anyone's thinking of taking a vacation down south, that is part of your long COVID protocol for sure.
Okay.
So the sunshine from vitamin D. But going on to the omega-3 fatty acids, the fish oils, yeah, we tend to be deficient in them. And then we get them through the diet. They're called essential because we can't make them in our bodies. We have to take them in daily. And so that's the wild caught salmon, that's the flax seeds, the walnuts, some of the leafy greens. And what they do is they prevent heart disease. And many of these long COVID symptoms, you know, they are the same as the symptoms and the pathology related to heart disease, diabetes, and chronic diseases. So everything that we're talking about today for long COVID is also part of a prevention and treatment plan that's effective for preventing and reversing heart disease and diabetes. So that's the good news here,
Okay.
and even Alzheimer's and some of the other neurodegenerative conditions. So the omega-3 fatty acids, basically they kind of quell the fire. So you think about them dampening the fire. What they're going to do is reduce inflammation and reduce something called oxidative stress, so the free radical damage. So omega-3s, a good quality, you have to get a good quality because the poor quality actually will do more harm than good. So make sure it's third-party tested. I like it to be sustainable. So that is really important.
Get good quality. I know one of the brands, I know you have great ones in your office and people can go to the ArtemisWellnessCenter.com, but one of the brands that I have to run by you, and they generally have good results if people just want to get something, is the Nordic Naturals. I know you're okay with that company. So but you want to research it. Make sure that you're finding a good company and that you're not getting, you know, a bunch of mercury or other things. You put on there turmeric and resveratrol and some other things. So turmeric, I think people know as a spice. And then resveratrol, I don't know if most people know what that is. And then NAC, which is something that I know you've recommended when you've got lung issues, that in Europe they use that all the time for bronchitis and all the, but here it's a vitamin.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the turmeric is great. You can grate it and you can use it in cooking. It's used a lot in Indian cooking. And you could even make a tea, like you mentioned the turmeric milk earlier on the segment.
Yeah.
So you can get something like I have like a turmeric milk, or you can get golden milk. You can make it into a beverage that you can do and consume regularly. It's anti-inflammatory. The resveratrol is really great because it's well known as part of the Mediterranean diet, and nutrition plays a huge role in terms of prevention and treatment of long COVID as well. Just to go back to that in a moment, but the resveratrol is found in things like red grapes, it's found in cranberries, it's found in many of the fruits and vegetables that are part of the Mediterranean diet. And so that has been shown to help with long COVID symptoms as well because of its anti inflammatory, antioxidant properties. So there's resveratrol. And then the other one is the NAC, as you mentioned, which is a pharmaceutical. It's actually used even in conventional medicine, and it's a wonderful supplement. And I hope we always continue to be able to use it as a supplement because there was, a period of time where there was question about that. But it's a really effective supplement. It helps with something called glutathione. It's antioxidant, anti-inflammatory. I recommend it for my patients for any kind of lung conditions. It's a natural mucolytic, kind of natural mucus reducer, and really great studies on it showing that it can help with some of those inflammatory symptoms of long COVID and any kind of lung condition. So that's definitely one of the ones on my list. And I've created little packets for my patients called immune boost packets that have a lot of these in it as an easy way to just take something. So the quercetin is another piece of that as well.
Right. And I know some people might not have heard of a lot of these and going, oh my gosh, do I have to take all of this? But there's reasons that at least to be happy that you don't have to stay with this fatigue. You don't have to stay with all this. How long, if you start supplementing with some of these good quality supplements and eating the food, I know you've recommended eat as many garlic and onions as you can. That has the quercetin and the antiviral, and so there are things we can do. But is part of it just time? I mean, how much time do you have to deal with the long COVID?
That's a great question. And the symptoms of long COVID, what the research is finding in local hospitals, and I have to thank my Dr. Seema Patel at the Cleveland Clinic for helping me, sharing her research on some of these supplements, and Dr. Leo Gallen. There's many doctors locally and otherwise really researching that because the symptoms can last weeks, they can last months, or they can last years. And like I said, in my patient population, I'm not seeing a lot of it because we have the preventative plan in place. So, you want to start with your foundational 4. If you have the foundational 4 in place, you're less likely to get it. So you want the multi without iron, the vitamin D, at least 2,000 IUs. You want a probiotic and the fish oil, good quality fish oil. So if you're on that, then you're less likely to have that longer stretch because you've already given your body what it needs, and your immune system and your cardiovascular, your pulmonary system, your system what it needs to not go off the rails with inflammation, which is long. So once you're there, it depends on what you do. So in terms of how long will long COVID be, it really depends on what you do. And I love that you are sharing this information, Kara. You're so wonderful for being able to share this information that people can do in their own kitchen. So you want to start with the Mediterranean diet, which is basically plant-based, a lot of fruits and vegetables, high in fiber. So that would be, the oatmeals and some of the high fiber vegetables. You want the good fats like the wild caught fish, the salmon, the mackerel, high polyphenol. That's the omega-3 fatty acids. And the high polyphenol is actually also the olive oil, which is an omega-9, and grapes and berries. So those polyphenols are really important for long COVID. And in fact, there was a study at Johns Hopkins that showed that being on a high fiber, plant-based, high polyphenol diet reduced the risk of severe infection from COVID by 70%. So this is stuff you can do tomorrow, today. Low in sugar, low in processed foods. So those good fats, the olive oil, they really play a big role in terms of reducing your risk of long COVID, reducing your risk of that post-inflammatory long COVID symptom, and going on it every day is an opportunity to start eating well. going on it. And we do a Mediterranean detox program that really helps with that. If someone needs extra help, is to get on a really good plan. And some of the lemons and oranges and apples and onions, all these things are high in resveratrol, quercetin, all the things that we talked about we want in supplementation.
The other thing is not eating, right? A lot of processed foods and junk and stuff that tastes yummy, but especially if you're trying to recover from a virus, that's just going to lead to more inflammation. So sort of weeding and seeding, if we can for a period of time, take out the bad and really push the good, things can flip kind of quickly within our own internal system, right?
Yes, they can. And I love that term, weeding and seeding, Kara. I'd love to use that. Is that trademarked or anything? I love it.
You know, I think
Weeding
I
and
learned that from Dr. Mark Hyman at the Cleveland Clinic. So I think I have to give credit for Dr. Mark Hyman. Yes. Weed and seed, like take the bad stuff out and then seed it with the probiotics and the good foods. But I think sometimes we think, oh my gosh, I really have empathy for people who are dealing with it. I've had some real fatigue after COVID. That was my biggest symptom. And you know, you expect that like as soon as you are back at work 3-4 days later, you should be on it. But that's also maybe just a little unrealistic for a human. You might take a little bit more time when you've had a big virus to, you need that rest. But the point being that it doesn't have to take forever, and we do have some control.
Yes, yes. And I'm sure Dr. Hyman would agree with me on all of the dietary pieces like this high fiber, high polyphenol. Like this is the stuff that really makes a difference long term. And the weeding is taking out the bad and like bringing in all the good nutrients that you need. That will change your biochemistry. That will change the trajectory of your life. It will change your risk of chronic disease and even that brain fog. So what happens is with all the foods that we have, there are Mediterranean diet foods, which is like a plant-based diet. All those foods are also feeding your microbiome. And in terms of those long-term issues with long COVID, you know, what was found is that everyone that was hospitalized for COVID had something called dysbiosis. So their gut bacteria was off. And from previous segments, we talked a lot about the microbiome, which is basically there's as many genes of our gut bacteria and our other cells as of our human cells. And so our gut plays a major role in our moods and our immune system. And so, you know, by eating well and some of these nutrients that we talked about in the foundational 4 as well, it's feeding the gut bacteria. And when the gut bacteria is off, that's what leads to that brain fog. That's what leads to, you know, not being able to produce those neurotransmitters like tryptophan that leads to serotonin that can calm your body and calm your brain. So anxiety, depression, these are all could be symptoms of long COVID for people because the dysbiosis, the inflammation, all those things also cause inflammation in the brain. We have this gut-brain connection and we cannot separate them. They are continually talking to each other.
Well, I think part of it's just the awareness that, okay, COVID isn't just about the cough or the fever, that once it's gone, you might have some of these inflammatory responses. And I know people really, this round of COVID seems a little bit different than, you know, a couple of years ago in 2020. But the insomnia is something that I feel like we're hearing it's a newer symptom, but I guess I was doing a little research. People are uncovering, as you said, it can be linked. It's an inflammatory response. What about the insomnia? What do you do for that? Because that's so frustrating if you're trying to heal, but you can't sleep.
Yeah, the insomnia is part of the vicious cycle of chronic disease as well. So insomnia or difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep, and those are treated differently in Eastern medicine. I'm also licensed acupuncturist, and difficulty falling asleep is like your spirit, you know, just like you can't calm your thoughts down. Difficulty staying asleep, there might be other causes contributing like hormonal or blood sugar. So we want to really, again, treat the cause. That's what we do in naturopathic medicine and integrative medicine. So in terms of difficulty sleeping, actually vitamin D deficiency increases the risk of insomnia. There are some really good studies out there. So you really want to make sure you know, maybe get your vitamin D tested or at least start taking some vitamin D in good quality form. Vitamin D3 and 2000 IUs at least, which is 50 mcgs, and make sure it doesn't have soy oil or anything else in it. So, you know, get a really good quality. So that's one thing that can affect sleep. The other thing is, you know, you talked about like giving ourselves some time to heal. I think that's the hardest part of the treatment program. The hardest part of the treatment plan is really giving ourselves the time and care we need to heal so that we can sleep better. We need our nervous system to come back on board. And there are different herbs and supplements and techniques, and even lavender essential oil on your pillow before bed. There are studies showing that that can help calm the nervous system, but it's a vicious cycle. You really want to, break the cycle and get back into a good sleeping routine. And the segment we did on melatonin would be one to review again, because that can be helpful in good doses. But there are a lot of herbs and supplements, and even just eating a little bit of foods high in tryptophan, like a little, and maybe even a little almond butter or some cheese and turkey roll up if you eat meat before bed, something to help boost the serotonin. And that ACE2 enzyme that I mentioned earlier, the angiotensin converting enzyme, it does play a role in the microbiome. So we really want to feed the gut, to feed the brain, so we can sleep and get the energy back.
Okay. Well, yeah. So the melatonin you're okay with. I know that we have done a whole nother segment, but just in general, taking a little melatonin to kind of get back on track is okay.
Yes, and there's also research on CBD and CBG. Like that's a whole segment. There's so much information coming out now, but there's a lot of different tools. I use therapeutic order as a naturopathic physician to figure out what medicine or what tool is the best thing at the right time for the right person. And so you want to start with diet and then build your way up. You might some chamomile tea, certainly some of the foods high in the precursors to tryptophan, and then go into the medicines. And then if needed, you can speak to a specialist about medication. But you really want to start with the foundation and then also do mind-body medicine techniques. I love listening to some meditations. And I recently started a Vipassana meditation class with my neighbor at Woodbridge. So they have a free class on Saturdays. So even those techniques that you can use to quiet the mind. Prayer is another example. Like anything you can do to quiet your mind will also quiet the inflammation and decrease your risk of neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia later on. So we have positive benefits long-term with these techniques too.
Right, and this isn't necessarily just COVID. I mean, people have had really bad cases of the flu or other viruses where it can take a while to come back. I think we get a little bit more afraid of COVID because it's newer and we're not sure, like, oh my God, am I going to be this way forever? But so the good news is changing your diet, taking some of these supplements definitely can help. Some of the more common ones that we hear about, I don't know that we've talked about it yet. Like people always say, oh, go get your vitamin C and your zinc.
Yes, vitamin C and zinc are important as well. And this is where people getting long COVID, you might be eating enough food, but you might not be getting enough nutrients in. So another issue with long COVID, what is the quality of your food? What do you have? Are you eating nutrient dense food? Nutrient dense food are things like, that would be found in a plant-based Mediterranean-like diet. So instead of having the chips, how about a sweet potato that has many more nutrients in it? Instead of, a piece of cake, how about doing something like oatmeal with flax seeds and nuts in it and seeds and berries? So the nutrient density is really important. And we get a lot of zinc and selenium from nuts and seeds. We also get vitamin C from citrus fruits, which have been independently shown to have anti-inflammatory benefits against, the inflammation that is part of the pathology of long COVID and heart disease and dementia and all these chronic diseases, diabetes. Yeah. So incorporating those foods are going to benefit you in multiple levels. And you'll get it from the foundational four, the good quality multivitamin D, fish oil, and probiotic. That's why that foundational nutrients are so important.
And if you're hearing this and think, gosh, I kind of ran out of my multivitamins a couple months ago, I haven't been taking anything, and I'm already suffering from this because so many people got COVID, RSV, flu. We've had such an uptick in the last couple of months. It's coming down now. It's not too late, and you can do this, and you want to give yourself extra rest, extra water, but taking some of these supplements could kind of turn things around a little bit faster, and the foods that you mentioned, right? So doing all this, even if you haven't been doing it up until, it's not too late.
It's never too late. Our body, our microbiome, our gut bacteria can change within 24 hours. So like having some good quality yogurt with some berries and nuts and seeds on it, you can start turning your gut around, which turns your brain around, every single meal you have an opportunity to change your inflammatory response, to change your future, and to also reverse long COVID. And one thing that we want to offer to all of your viewers is if you email us at info@artemiswellnesscenter.com, I already told my wonderful patient coordinator will send you the free protocol, but the book is available. When I wrote the book did research on it, talking to a lot of wonderful people at Yale, at respiratory therapists, and this research is ongoing, by places like Cleveland Clinic. We really see that there's a lot we can do. The supplements, the diet are extremely effective and will really shift the course, and they can do it relatively quickly. But we can share that with you, and it's available for free on the website too.
Yeah, so we put up the website. It was artemiswellnesscenter.com. If you want to send an actual email, it's info@artemiswellnesscenter.com, or I'm sure there's a contact button on there. But mention that you're watching CURES, you want to get the COVID protocol, and Dr. Morris will send that to you for free. I know you also visit with people and treat people. A lot of times you don't have to go to Milford, Connecticut. The beautiful thing is you can do a lot by telemedicine and then have people do their testing at their own Quest lab or wherever they go. So there's always that opportunity. Most of us have traditional doctors. If you want someone to really focus on some of these symptoms, someone like yourself would be a complement to your regular doctor. People get confused. You don't have to necessarily switch, but you might go to someone like you who's going to really help you rebuild your system.
Yes. And, naturopathic physicians were trained as general practitioners, but every state regulates, what we can do. So in Washington State, I have full prescription rights where I went to Bastyr. But in Connecticut, because we don't have full prescription rights yet, I love working with the other doctors. So you want to retain your MD or DO. And, the best medicine is collaborative medicine, patient-centered medicine. So, I'm also the academic director of a master's program in integrative health and healing. And one thing that we really need in healthcare today is we need to work together and stop trying to, push each other down. We really all need to work together. And I'm so grateful to the other doctors and specialists and, the hospitals that are working on this so that we can figure out together how to help people, because it's really about collaboration. And so, yeah, if you come to see me or another naturopathic doctor, we can do some specialized testing. We are experts in nutritional supplements. We're the only physicians that are trained in nutritional supplements, herbal medicine, and a holistic approach to healing, along with integrative practitioners that go on for school. So let's all work together to beat this.
Dr. Artemis Morris, as always, thank you for your wealth of information. And I hope that if this was meaningful to you, or if you've got a friend or a loved one who is struggling with some post-COVID symptoms, this is a must listen to. So thank you, Dr. Morris, for being with us.
Thank you so much, Kara.
Again, you can listen to the CURES podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can have this whole conversation again. Listen to it in the car with your family members. You can follow me on social media at Kara Sundlin. I do love to share this content there. Have a great day, everyone, and be well.